I have 3 adult children and 2 aren't talking to me. And do I give a damn? Of course I care, but I'm not going to feed into their bullshit.
A patient is asking me to call his son, who he's not spoken to in 10 years, and tell him to come visit him before he dies.
That's your mom. Like, how can you just not talk to her?
For some of us, the idea of cutting off a parent feels unthinkable. You hear things like, that's your mom, that's your dad, how could you? But for others, the truth is, once you're no longer dependent on your parents for the basics of life, food, shelter, survival, what is left of the relationship is either the bond that they've built with you or the one that they did not. Family is everything, right? This is one thing that we're told when we're growing up, and this is one thing that a lot of us prioritize on as adults. But then you look around and see more and more adults making the choice to go no contact with their parents. If you're unfamiliar with this basically means when an adult child completely cuts off communication with a parent. While some people might think, oh, you're being so dramatic or even selfish, what I've found while researching this video is that it's rarely about one small argument. It's usually like decades of issues piling up until people finally say, I've had enough, and they literally cut ties with their parents. You can't help but wonder, are they being selfish and ungrateful? Are there deeper reasons that push someone to make such a drastic decision? I should say upfront that I personally don't have this experience, so I really have no idea what it feels like. But I've seen quite a number of people do this, both people I know and people I don't know personally. And so I think that it is worth talking about. Let's talk about the different reasons why some children stay completely away from their parents, especially when they become adults, and why it's probably more complicated than you think.
For the past 10 years, but I would say it's been pretty consistent for the last 5 or 6 years. When I say no contact, I mean no contact. I don't have her phone number. I don't have her address. She met my son, but only once when he was 2 years old, and now he's about to be 7 years old this year. And she's never met my daughter, and she has not met my fiance. And the one thing that I did not expect when I went no contact with her was the amount of people in my life that would meet me for the very first time, find out that I'm no contact with my mom, and then ask me to mend the relationship. They would just automatically assume that that was my first course of action, and I did nothing to try to make the relationship between me and my mom work before I cut her off. And what I need for people to realize is that is the result of trying to make the relationship work. The no contact is the end of something. It's not the beginning of something. Typically, adult children that have gone no contact with their parents, that wasn't their first plan of action. They tried for probably many years to make the relationship with their mom or dad work. I know for me personally, there were years where my mom didn't take accountability. It wasn't just one conversation. True healing between two people cannot happen if only one person is acknowledging the trauma. And then even once the trauma is acknowledged, there needs to be a change in behavior. And it drives me absolutely insane when people just think, oh, you took the easy way out by just cutting her off. That was not the easy part. That was a very difficult decision. And it's a decision that I personally do not regret because I know everything that took place and I know that I'd made the best decision for myself. And as a result of not having contact with me, she also does not have contact with my children. And I've said this in a video before, but children, no matter what the age, do not owe their parents anything. And that includes contact with their grandchildren. Parenting is a one-way street. It always has been that way. It is a job that you do not get thanked for because your children did not ask to be here. You did not have to have them. I also didn't expect the fallout that would happen with other family members because of my decision to cut off my mom. There are family members that don't talk to me, mostly siblings, just because of the fact that I won't have a relationship with our mom. And that's okay too, because although we have the same mother, I do realize we had a different experience with her based on the amount of time that we spent around her. I'm just saying, if you meet a person and find out that they're no contact with their parents, please respect their decision. And keep in mind that it is always the parent's responsibility to mend that relationship. It's never the child's responsibility, no matter how old they are.
So just listening to this objectively, there are always two sides to a story. And of course, I'm not saying that she might have been wrong or this fallout is her fault. Well, I think it's definitely hard to draw a conclusion on videos like this because there's no context. However, going with what she mentioned and taking in, what she has given us at face value, I think what she alluded to is the fact that she has tried to make this this relationship work many times and it's just not happening. She definitely said something there that I feel like a lot of people encounter also, when they decide to have this no contact situation going with their parents. A lot of parents, when they're wrong, sometimes they don't necessarily apologize or even acknowledge that they're wrong, especially from the boomer generation. And they will do everything but apologize. They will make you good food. They will do other things to show care. Okay, especially if you're African, if you're Nigerian and you're watching this, probably know what I'm talking about. Our parents would hardly, apologize when they are wrong. But I definitely think many of them are that way because they didn't experience that from their parents as well. Again, this is just one perspective, right? I think it also matters what was done wrong here. If we're talking about, maybe your parent forgot your birthday, they were not able to send you on vacation when you were younger, buy you stuff, maybe those things are not big deals. Or if we're talking about like bigger issues, like them being involved with toxic partners that ended up affecting you psychologically or emotionally, or being abusive or constantly criticizing and demeaning, even if there's like neglect, I think those are definitely major issues that need to be addressed even beyond just taking accountability. Another thing this lady said here that I don't 100% agree with is that it is always the parents' responsibility to mend the relationship. I think it's not one-sided because there's no human that's perfect enough to have that responsibility. At the end of the day, even if this person is a parent, is still a human being. So it would be unfair to say, because there's a fallout, then it has to be the parent that is mending that relationship. I think that both the parents and the adult have a responsibility towards making things work and creating peace, having a reconciliation. But I don't think one person should ever take that responsibility totally off themselves and say, because I'm the child, I don't have a responsibility to try to make peace with my parents, even though I've done something or they've done something wrong. There are a lot of situations like this online, but many people don't necessarily go into details. But these are common issues that parents and kids deal with that could easily become patterns. Things like neglect when they were younger, constantly criticizing. Maybe one child was preferred over the other, or maybe one person was always praised, one person was better in school, one person was better at sports. And those things have a way of kind of affecting people psychologically and emotionally. And so I would see why sometimes, especially when it gets extreme, where maybe someone's mom had a relationship with a man that was maybe physically abusing the daughter or the son, I would say why they will want to stay away from such a parent, because first of all, they want to forget those things. Having constant communication with their parents is probably a reminder of those things, and they probably want to forget those events that happen. And especially in situations where there is no change, maybe there's no repentance, right? Maybe this parent has always been putting down a particular child, and even as adults, they're still doing the same thing. You would not want to be around someone like that, even for your own mental health, for your own sanity, to stop having PTSD. So I would see why, it just makes it difficult to continue to have a healthy relationship with said parents if they don't actually change or are committed 100% to change, or even trying to do things differently, and they're just like, this is the way I am. By now you should have accepted me this way. It's just hard to want to foster a relationship with that kind of parent.
This is the least favorite part of my job. My patient is asking me to call his son, who he's not spoken to in 10 years, and tell him to come visit him before he dies. Okay. So he said no, he's not going to come. I said that I respect that decision. Asked if he wants me to notify him whenever his dad does die, and he said yes. I have to go in here now and tell the patient that. Okay, I told my patient. Didn't go well. I told him that his son said that he doesn't want to come. The patient asked if I told him that he was dying. I said I did. He said, you should have told him that he had to come. I said, I'm not going to do that. I offered, if my patient wants to write his son a letter, that I will get it to him, but I said I can't tell you that he'll open it. My patient told me to get out. I love this patient so much, but it's just not my place to guilt trip someone into coming. I have no idea what this person was like the first 80 years of their life before I met them. As much as it sucks to get yelled at in that way, hopefully I did the right thing.
I was actually so sad listening to this because I really can't comprehend the amount of hurt that the child or that man must have gone through to decide that he wasn't going to be there at his dad's bedside as he was dying. I definitely believe in honoring your parents, but honor doesn't mean tolerating harm or abuse. Again, we don't have context because these videos don't really show both sides of the story, right? So it's kind of unfair to just judge. We also don't know what this son went through, and honestly, for him to say no even though he knew his father was dying is one of two things. Is either the son is super unforgiving, okay, and has a heart of stone, or the want that this son has gone through is so deep that he wants nothing to do with this man again. And I think it's just, truly heartbreaking.
I have 3 adult children and 2 aren't talking to me. And do I give a damn? Of course I care, but I'm not going to feed into their bullshit.
This video is interesting to watch because I think it encapsulates how a lot of parents feel about their millennial Gen Z children. And as a millennial myself, I want to give my perspective on this topic.
This creator asked the question why, and then another creator stitched her video and it was like, okay, well, I did this and I'm one of those kids and I walked away. Well, from my parents because they had trauma. Well, I look at it this way. They are basically saying that during our lifetime, that when their life overlapped with ours, that we should have provided them with a trauma-free, wonderful, perfect life. And I look at my mother, I have grace and empathy. Because she came up in a time where just certain things weren't available. I know that during my childhood, she battled depression. And these kids that look at our life and look at our timeline, who expect our timelines to be trauma-free so they can be individuals, they're not dealing in reality. They're not dealing with real adulthood, because real adulthood is being able to look at somebody else and have grace and empathy.
First of all, no adult child is expecting their parent to provide them with a trauma-free, wonderful life. What they ask for is for you to take accountability and make change. She goes on to say being a real adult is about having grace and empathy for people, like how she had grace and empathy for her mother who was battling depression. And I can agree with that. That is a part of adulthood. But my question is, where is the grace and empathy for the child who is being passed on all this generational trauma? Majority of children don't up and leave out of nowhere. A majority of children crave to be loved and validated by their own parents. Like, you can tell immediately there's no grace or empathy for her children because she calls what they're doing their bullshit. She also goes on to talk about how she's not talking about real abusers, ones that molest and rape and beat their children, etc. Not realizing that emotional abuse and neglect actually causes the same amount, if not more, trauma to a child than all these other types of abuses that she considers more serious. And you can tell by this video and other videos that she's posted that she's very much stuck in that emotionally abusive cycle. There's a video where she talks about how her generation was only fed one stream of information, and that was to love and respect your parents and give them grace and empathy, proving that, she felt like she had no other choice but to feel that way towards her mom. Even though on the inside she may have felt conflicted, she may still love her mom, but it must have been hard growing up with a mom that had depression. There had to have been some level of emotional neglect or abuse there. And because she was never given the space to share her emotions and have them validated, she expects the same level of love and empathy that she was forced to give her mom from her children.
I definitely think this woman has a point here where it is true, right? There's no perfect parent, and that's because there's no perfect human. And life itself is not necessarily easy. A mom who worked 2 jobs and barely had any energy left at the end of the day might not exactly, have been emotionally available. And that's not necessarily because she didn't care. A dad who was never told I love you by his own dad might struggle to show affection, even if he deeply wants to. Now, a lot of African dads will tell you, God bless you, when you tell them I love you. I'm sure if you're African and you're listening to this, you can relate. They tell your parents I love you and they're like, God bless you. Just because that's not exactly something that they're used to. Now, a lot of immigrant parents as well literally have uprooted their whole lives and, passed down their own stress without necessarily realizing how it weighed on their kids. There are things like mental health struggles, financial instability, a lot of cultural limitations as well. And all of these things we can't rule out that they actually shape how parents show up, and honestly, expecting perfection really sets everyone up for, disappointment or failure. But I think where she's wrong is minimizing the harm that dealing with all of this can have on our kids. Right? So, there's supposed to be grace as well, but you can't rule out the fact that having dealt with all of that stuff, there are repercussions from dealing with that could affect the kids as well. And of course, they don't expect life to be a bed of roses, but some accountability definitely should be taken. Apart from the fact that our parents should be one of our safe spaces, taking accountability is also a learning opportunity to teach your child something that you did is wrong and that you acknowledge that it is. And I definitely think that there should be grace for a parent who live through their own struggles, but there also has to be accountability for the damage that might have been passed down as a result of that. So at the end of the day, I don't feel like anybody who decides to go no contact is necessarily feeling like, they're winning their parents at something. If anything, a lot of people who I personally have observed going through this situation are going through a lot of hurt, and it shows. And so it's not necessarily, about someone being the good person and someone being the bad person. Sometimes someone is the bad person. Let's not rule that out. But sometimes there have also been a lot of issues that have piled up, unresolved issues. Sometimes it's definitely the parents' fault. Sometimes it's not the parents' fault, and it's just the way that life has dealt with a lot of people. And I think that a lot of people decide to use this distance as a way to just survive, essentially, as a way to have some peace, as a way not to have a lot of hardship added to their life, to all the stuff they have going on already. So if you are on either side of this, whether you're a parent or a child, I guess my words to you will be to remember that, healing is always possible. It might be gradual, it might only come in small ways. It might not 100% mean reconciliation or full contact, because a lot could have happened and there would be situations where distance is best for everybody. But I definitely think that peace, in whatever form it takes, is still something that is worth holding on to. And for those who haven't experienced this, I hope you walk away from this with a little bit more empathy for how complicated family can really be. I'd love to hear your perspective. Have you ever seen this play out in someone's life? Have you had an experience like this? If so, was having distance, the healthiest choice? Please share in the comments, like and subscribe if you like videos like this and you want to see more. And thank you for watching.